In this series of video programmes, we take you, the viewer, on a visit to one part of the UK for a closer look at those railways and museums. If we consider this map split up into 9 different parts, it simplifies matters for area grouping. In this edition of Railways Restored, we shall be visiting a selection of the many varied railways, steam centres and museums to be found in the northwest of England. Our route will take us north on the M6 motorway to Penrith, where we scale the Pennines to Alston. Travelling southwest across the beautiful Lake District, we visit the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway. South on the motorway network, our next stop will be Steamtown Carnforth. North of Southport is the fascinating and little-known railway at Hesketh Bank, officially known as the West Lancashire Railway. The seaside resort of Southport has a steam collection of its very own at Steamport Southport. Moving our attentions eastwards, we visit Bury, the starting point for the standard gauge East Lancashire Railway. Greater Manchester city centre contains the region's largest science and industry museum, which houses a fascinating collection of steam engines and locomotives. To finish our tour of the region, we visit the oldest surviving public tramway system in Britain, at Blackpool. Together, these railways, museums and steam centres, along with a few we were unable to visit, make up the Railways Restored of northwest England. We begin our journey, though, in the far north of Cumbria, high in the Pennines. Easily accessible from Junction 40 on the M6, Alston is England's highest market town and was once the terminus of a standard gauge branch line from Holtwhistle, which lies on the Trans-Pennine Newcastle to Carlisle main line. Today, it's the home of the South Tynedale Railway. Locomotive Chuckers Kraal, number 6, rostered for duty, is prepared and leaves for the station. Already, plenty of interest is being shown by the intending passengers as the train is made ready for departure. In the early 1980s, the line was relaid to 2-foot gauge and reopened for passenger carrying on July the 30th, 1983, to a temporary halt near Gilderdale Viaduct. Running along a stout retaining wall above the confluence of the rivers Nent and South Tyne, where locals use the slow-flowing deep water for diving practice, the train heads out into the gentle countryside. Chucker's Kraal evocatively warns of its approach to an occupation crossing. Gently drifting into Gilderdale, the line's present temporary halt, we can see the way ahead, with the next phase of extending the railway to Kirkhoff taking shape and due for completion at the end of 1991. Chucker's Kraal was built by Hunslet's in 1940 for use in South Africa. This makes the locomotive very unusual, as at that time all the factory's output was being directed towards the enormous demands of World War II. Bought and repatriated in 1977 by the North Gloucestershire Narrow Gauge Company, it's now on extended loan to the South Tynedale Railway. The diesel locomotive is only necessary for the time being to provide air for the continuous brakes on the train, while arrangements are in hand to fit an air pump to Chucker's Kraal. With the passengers obviously enjoying the experience of this delightful railway, Chucker's Kraal enthusiastically returns to Alston. From the high ground of Alston, we move to sea level on the west coast of the Lake District, to the headquarters of the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway. Today, we join the railway as Northern Rock is being turned after its arrival from Dalegarth. Originally a mineral-carrying railway of 3-foot gauge, it was taken over by the famous model engineer W.J. Bassett Loke and his partner R.P. Mitchell, and converted to its present 15-inch gauge in 1915. Northern Rock, a 262 locomotive, was built by the Ravenglass and Eskdale Railway in 1976 at their own workshop. It's considered by many to be the most powerful 15-inch gauge locomotive in the world. In the running shed, 2 more locomotives are being prepared to help run the intensive service the railway operates during the summer months. In the workshop, work continues on building Northern Rock 2 for export to Japan. River Might arrives for its day's duties, glinting in the sun. All train movements are controlled by a sophisticated radio system in the signal box at Ravenglass.
On the base, on the 3, you may proceed to Ravenglass, over.
On the base 2, proceed to Ravenglass, over.
Roger now, 3.
A diesel-hauled arrival clears the section to Miteside Loop, leaving the road clear for River Might to depart. Lubrication finishing touches completed, Northern Rock departs Ravenglass. The first stop on the line is at the historical Moncaster Mill, now renovated and open to the public. Northern Rock, River Ert and River Might, with their spirited and purposeful style, transport their passengers through the beautiful Lake District scenery. Dalegarth, the terminus of the line, and Northern Rock is once more made ready for its return to Ravenglass, content in the knowledge that it's added a degree of pleasure to its passengers' lives. Carnforth Motive Power Depot, built by Italian prisoners of war in 1942, saw the end of its working life in 1968. That was until a group of enthusiasts realized its potential. It had the scope to display mainline locomotives with public access, whilst maintaining the essential features of the site, such as the coaling and ash plants, now the only surviving examples in Britain. Steam power is shown to good effect, with industrial locomotive David working a push-pull train on the 3/4-mile line. Contrasting with Big Brother is 15-inch gauge locomotive Princess Elizabeth, built in 1914 by Bassett Loke, providing the visitor with a link between the site's attractions. Tucked away in a corner of Lancashire is a narrow gauge railway with a history and character all of its own. The railway was the brainchild in 1967 of 6 schoolboys who rented the site from the adjoining brickworks so that they could realise a dream of owning their own railway. Thus was born the 2-foot gauge West Lancashire Railway. got their first diesel locomotive in 1968. 2 coaches were acquired in 1970 from the Southport Pier Railway. Today's locomotive was built in Berlin in 1913. It arrived at the railway in 1984, having worked at a coal mine in Spain. It's part of a large collection of steam and diesel locomotives, with attendant wagons and other items of rolling stock now owned by the West Lancashire Railway. What was once the motive power depot of British Railways at Derby Road, Southport, houses a collection of road and rail exhibits being restored to working order. The Society, following negotiations with British Rail, occupied the site in 1973, following which Steamport Southport Museum was opened to the public in 1974. In the early morning, before the visitors arrive, the exhibits are being shunted out of the shed for display. Visitors to the Steamport can also enjoy the pleasure of a short steam-hauled journey. On this occasion, the coaches are hauled by the very unusual St Monans, which is a 100-horsepower geared four-wheel steam locomotive with a vertical boiler and cylinders built in 1947 by Sentinels Limited, Shrewsbury. All forms of steam motive power are on display here, and in the sheds, work continues on renovation and restoration. By 1846, the builders of the East Lancashire Railway had toiled long and hard, building viaducts, driving tunnels through solid rock, and excavating thousands of tons of spoil to create cuttings and embankments, little imagining that 134 years later, their vision would be kept alive by a band of railway enthusiasts. Railway preservation is now commonplace, but when starting from scratch, the task is enormous. Today, we see an efficient railway providing education and entertainment through a valley rich in history and interest, thanks to the East Lancashire Railway Company. Gothenburg, once prepared, leaves the running shed and collects its rake of coaches. Setting back into the platform, passengers are already waiting for the first departure of the day. Leaving Bolton Street Station, the train immediately enters the 80-yard Bolton Street Tunnel. Soon, a loop in the River Irwell is encountered and crossed for the first time. With Brooks Bottom Viaduct in the background, the train plunges into the 423-yard Brooks Bottom Tunnel, only to emerge for a short distance before diving into the 115-yard Nuttall Tunnel. Framed by the generous portal of Nuttall Tunnel, Gothenburg is now within sight of the present terminus at Ramsbottom. Journey's end, and the train drifts slowly to a halt in the rebuilt station. Gothenburg, built in 1903 by Hudswell Clark of Leeds, was originally one of a fleet of powerful locomotives serving the railway system of the Manchester Ship Canal. The locomotive, now privately owned, forms part of a large collection of industrial, ex-British Rail steam, diesel and diesel-electric locomotives, giving a wide variety of motive power, ensuring the visitor a feast of interest when visiting the railway. Not content with the achievement of reopening the line to Ramsbottom, work is now well in hand with extending the line a further 4 miles to Rawtenstall. Greater Manchester's city centre is home to the Science and Industry Museum. Throughout history, man has used various forms of power to work tools and drive machinery. Horses were used for ploughing, driving farm machinery and transporting goods and people. Water was harnessed to grind corn and power machinery to fashion all sorts of wares and implements that man's changing living standards demanded. In the 18th and 19th centuries, there was an enormous increase in the demand for power. In the museum's power hall, we can see examples of the many and varied forms of steam, gas and oil engines that were developed to drive machines large and small. There have been many stages in the development of steam, but none more dramatic than on the railways. Here we see perhaps the ultimate in Bayer Peacock's Garrett class, with a wheel arrangement of 482 plus 284, weighing in at a massive 215 tons and capable of hauling 1,200-ton trains up a gradient of 1 in 50, and all this on a track gauge of 3 foot 6 inches. Demonstrating the principles of a steam locomotive is a cutaway of a Bayer Peacock locomotive that once worked on the Isle of Man Railway. Steam may also be seen working on the short demonstration line, giving the museum a real sense of life. North on the M6, west on the M55, and our final stop is at Blackpool. England's first electric street tramway was opened in Blackpool on the 29th of September 1885 and has survived all its contemporaries. It's not a restored railway, but an institution that couldn't be left out as it continues to provide a public service and enjoyment to countless thousands every year. Today, it hosts Bolton Corporation Tramway number 66, which contrasts with the modern high-capacity twin units. Tram development continues, as the present design, seen passing, was introduced as recently as 1984. Car 634, built by the brush company Loughborough in 1937, glides past a blue-liveried example of today's image in transport. But it's when the sun sets that Blackpool comes alive. Lights and the Wurlitzer are synonymous with Blackpool. It has a magic that's unique. The Golden Mile puts on its nighttime colourful smile, and the ingenuity of the illumination designers creates an atmosphere dispelling ugliness and kindling happy memories.